Okay, so continuing this conversation on the afterlife, I thought that before we got into some of the nitty-gritty of the afterlife, that we would talk about what could possibly be the elephant in the room for some people. And that is, why bother? Why should we bother learning about the afterlife? It's always a great thing to do that before you study something, you try to find the purpose, the reason behind what it is you're studying or what your desire to study it is. And so simply asking the question, why bother? Why don't we just remain here in this world? Why are we trying to conquer other worlds? Why are we trying to shoot a rocket to space when we have people that are hungry here? These are important questions. So the desire to know, the desire to explore what's going to happen in the afterlife stems from an innate human curiosity. I mean, probably, like I was talking about landing a rocket on the moon, probably the curiosity that landed us on the moon is a similar curiosity to the curiosity that we have for the afterlife. But the question that arises, at least in my mind, the question that arises from a deep desire to see life work out. Because for many of us, it's quite frightening to think that evil people just get away with what they do and are never compensated. When people observe the righteous suffering and quote unquote, the bad guys prospering, one of the ways that they come to terms with this cognitive dissonance is to say, just wait until the next world. Just wait until the afterlife. Then they're going to get what's coming to them. I know I've done that before. So for many people, the entire concept of immortality and the perpetual survival of self is it's a psychological cushion, and it's intended to help them make sense of a world that at times seems unfair. It seems unjust. And so it's a way that we human beings who are limited by time and space can cope with elements of our lives that are not limited by time and space. And even though the belief may be comforting, believing in something doesn't make it real. Although it does, of course, make it real to the person who believes in it, whether or not it's actually real. So in the face of this pressing existential question, we turn to the Torah for guidance. We turn to Sinai, the lowly mountain in the desolate wilderness, covered in the clouds of glory, from which God's voice, from which the divine voice made itself known in the world. And in addition to the Torah itself, we also turn to the spiritual teachers of the past, the masters who dedicated their lives translating the Torah or translating the word of God into our lives. So regarding the unknowable cosmic future, the time of the redemption, the Rambam, Maimonides, says pertaining, he writes, to all issues and relating to things referring to the arrival of the Mashiach and referring to the Messianic era, no one knows how it will occur until it actually occurs. Therefore, he says, there's no need to ponder these issues, and you should not consider them as fundamental because they don't bring a reverence nor a love for the Creator. So just to unpack Maimonides' statement for a moment, Maimonides is basically saying that the main job of us individuals living in a world that is defined by time and space is to have a reverence and a love for God. Anything that will help us have a reverence and love for God is good, and anything that will take us away from that reverence and love for God is something that we should stay away from, because it's not helping us make this world a better place. That's Maimonides' statement. So just to kind of unpack it a little more, this kind of philosophic detachment should be one's default approach to such matters of distant past and of future events. But not everyone is that mature and ready to admit the limits of their knowledge. Many people find that it's precisely these kinds of issues and the intimate knowledge of their intricate details that help them cultivate the reverence and the love for God. And perhaps, as we've spoken about before in this class, a deeper appreciation for life itself. Because by understanding this, I don't know about you, but at least for me, understanding this has allowed me to see the world differently than, to see my life differently than perhaps other elements of teachings and learnings. So for many of us, the contemplation of these, what we're going to call unknowable events and outcomes, actually inspires us to become better people here. So we could say to Maimonides, yes, it's true that if it takes us away from a love and a reverence of God, it's not a good thing. But actually, in this case, we're going to say it brings us closer. It gives us a better ability to have a love and reverence for God. So, for instance, in the context of considering the afterlife, we can be motivated to weigh every thought that we have, every word that we speak, and every action that we do more carefully and consciously, because the knowledge of just how far-reaching the effects of our behaviors and the effects of our state of minds can be, allow us, in this regard at least, to see that these teachings can play a positive role and a functional role in a person's developmental path and character refinement. Alexandra, you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. So
no,
now
I'm listening. I'm trying to put it into practical terms in my head.
I'm just giving a little background on this right now. So no two people are alike, and no two people are motivated and inspired by the same tune or the same idea. So broadly speaking, there are some people who find that in the notion of their mortality, it's precisely what empowers them and provides them with perspective. Having some sort of defined and limited lease on life gives them more focus and ability to find meaning in life today. For these people, if you're one of them, the awareness or the fear of death enriches their life, and the very suggestion that all things come to an end forces these people to develop themselves more definitively and more appropriately. The parameter of the frame, so to speak, gives a proper structure to work within. Otherwise, what happens is life feels much like attempting to sketch out a coherent image on an endless canvas. We could possibly fear that if we're not feeling the finite, if we're not feeling connected in this world, that there would be too much to accomplish. So creativity is best served with a defined paradigm and a defined framework. On the other hand, there's another type of person. There's a person for whom the knowledge that there's more to life than the eye can see, both now and in the future, allows them to operate with less fear. They're able to approach life with a greater love, with a more profound sense of harmony. And so for this kind of a person, the idea of an afterlife becomes both empowering and liberating. What I'll say to this is that it appears that while we in the modern world are advancing by leaps and bounds in so many areas of life, such as how we enhance life's performance, how we even extend life. But with regards to this existential fear of death, we're becoming immature. I would say we're even regressive. So since the so-called death of God, and the term God has been used, and for a lot of people, it's a very difficult word, and it's important to address that. And that's probably part of the reason why it's not so popular today. But what has emerged instead is the birth of death. What we have now, if you allow me a moment, is the modern mind that is devastatingly plagued by an overwhelming fear of death, an overwhelming fear of becoming old, which means, I would say the same thing. Becoming old and death have that same fear. And so because of that, I think this is why today having this discussion is even more important. Because if we don't have something to anchor us, what ends up happening is we end up getting plagued by this overwhelming fear. For most people, fear of death is still their greatest fear. Though it is, I saw a study not long ago, but again, it's probably a different age group than in our room today, but that the number one fear in America is a fear of zombies, a fear of a zombie apocalypse, actually. But I would say in this room, probably that doesn't apply.
As they're thinking of Mashiach, and they're thinking people will come up.
Exactly.
They will be invaded by the millions of people that have died before us.
Exactly.
Hilarious.
I wonder, that's interesting to me because if I take that idea, because at first I was very judgy when you just said that. I was like, who would? But if I just take a layer off of that and think about, well, what would that represent really? It would represent living a mindless, soulless life. It would be just consumption without any self-reflection. So maybe that's just how those words represent themselves right now culturally, I guess.
Exactly. I mean, it's with all the conversation about zombies, it would make sense.
We're smacking.
Yeah. And I think this is a very important element, what you're saying, is that I think with this kind of thinking, whether it's individual or it's cultural, there's this corresponding death of death, that the more God, for those who are believers, or for those who are followers, or who have God in their life, the more God is alive and present within our lives, the less room there is for fear and anxiety. But because we live in a world where it's a godless world, whatever that means, we're not necessarily believing in nothing. Rather, we're believing in something. And this something is often going to include all types of strange ideas that are going to foster in strange fears and invasive anxieties that may or may not make sense. So it's interesting, and we see this in so many different ways, that God has been replaced in today's society, which means it's not like all of a sudden we have the silent revolution and we have advanced by getting rid of God. We've actually, to a certain extent, regressed because we've replaced God with nonsense. You follow? Questions, thoughts before I continue? We're good?
Why do you think God has been replaced? Is it just modern society and so much information?
Well, there's two reasons, I think. I don't want to believe in a God that creates so much strife. And unfortunately, it's not God that created the strife. It's humans using God to justify their nefarious acts. I cannot believe in the same God as a suicide bomber.
Right.
And that suicide bomber uses the word God. And so part of it is the semantics, that they happen to both be using the same word. And the other part of it is, I think, there's probably a collective PTSD as a result of that people have. It definitely hasn't made our lives any more meaningful, that's for sure, or any more purposeful. As Winston Churchill said, today people are talking more and more about less and less. And he didn't even have the internet.
Right.
But he had no idea what was coming.
He had no idea what was coming, and how profound and how true his statement was.
Right.
Can't we say historically, looking at the spiral of history, as far back as there are things written, that this issue of justifying evil acts with their belief in God, it seems to be one of the most violent issues globally.
Yeah, it's not only the violent issues, it's the easiest blame. Because when you say that, God is not going to come and say, you're wrong, I have nothing to do with this. So it's easy. I think, again, I think it's really semantics that the word God has gotten a bad rap. Alana, please.
Yeah, along those lines. Sorry about the background noise, but like the whole issue with the residential schools and the priests who have been found, having abused so many children, and there's been this whole backlash. So I think this is all part of this, using God in the most horrific ways,
I agree.
hiding behind God, maybe.
It's easy. It's an easy way to justify cruel acts.
Just for balance, sadly, we do not lack of our own sexual predators in our Jewish communities.
No, absolutely. And that's not, but when, unfortunately, and again, I'm very saddened that these priests are able to use their privilege to do what they're doing, and as a result, they have brought whatever version of God they represent down with them. And the same thing if it's a rabbi or if it's an imam or it's of any, they're human beings. Human beings are flawed, and unfortunately, whenever we're going to give an anthropomorphic or a godlike reverence to a physical person, we're going to end up in trouble. And that's why we have a Torah and we don't look at the people. We look at the Torah. And people say, well, I saw this and this person who had a kippah on do this and this thing. Well, I'm happy that you saw this and this person with a kippah on. That person's physical, and that's why we have a Torah. I would hope that somebody wearing a kippah would have a certain sense of ethics and morality, but it's not always the case. And it's not fair to be able to judge Judaism based on a person with a kippah who may or may not be going through whatever they're going through, or may or may not have struggles that we don't know anything about. For that matter, it doesn't make sense to judge anyone about anything.
I think for me, it gets tougher in the Catholic priest situation, as there's such a hierarchical up to the Pope, and there was so much protection. I know we're not supposed to judge, but it's difficult when it's like been all up the line. Is it not just that individual person? But that's just my sense.
You know the story about the rabbi and the priest, right?
What?
The
Which
rabbi,
one?
exactly, which one? The rabbi and the priest, and they're talking, and he says, so what happens after that? Is there any way that you can become greater than a priest? He says, sure. If I'm lucky, maybe one day I can be a cardinal. So there's only a handful of cardinals. Wow. And what about once you become a cardinal? Is there any way after that? He's like, yeah, I can become an archbishop. He's like, wow. So and then maybe if I become an archbishop, that one day I can be the Pope. It's like, and what about after that? He's like, it's the Pope. That's it. There's nothing after that. He's like, what do you mean? What about God? He's like, God, come on. He's like, why not? One of our boys did it.
Wait, what did you say? Why not?
I said, why not? One of our boys did it.
Jesus.
Yes. Anyway. Bad joke. Okay.
No, hilarious, hilarious.
So it's important. It's important to have this conversation because of how much people have associated religion and God with negativity and other of elements like this. And I understand it. They're right. They're right. And I've said this before. If you are referring to the God of the suicide bomber, I don't want anything to do with it. That's not my God, and I don't want to have anything to do with it. That's an absolute, there's no way anyone in any way can justify something of killing innocent people in the name of whatever God. I don't care what you say, or hurting innocent people, or abusing innocent people, or even non-innocent people.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. Like
Yeah.
any people.
Any people.
Any people. And I think, it's also to what Jill had brought up and what you're talking about. There's an aspect of control. It's in the less extreme example of, if we take it away from murder and, pedophilia, there's this sense of being controlled through a human that's imperfect. And that's why I appreciate so much. I heard a rabbi say many times, I'm not here. How do you say it, Rabbi? I'm not here to make the choices for you. I'm here. How do you say that?
I'm not here to make choices for you. I'm here to support the choices you make.
That really helped me get over that hurdle of having PTSD from being controlled by a teacher for a good part of my life.
Right. And that's an important thing. And that's perhaps, I say it because that's really how I live. But maybe I also share some of that PTSD. And maybe that's why I'm so conscious of it. So we're all sharing that. I think that unfortunately is what happens in our generation to a lot of spirituality and spiritual teachings, is they were used for different levels of corruption. And so now that we are the students or the results of that, we have to be that much more conscious. And the great thing is that, and why I think the books are so amazing, is that we can go back to the basics without having to have all of the emotional connection and reaction that exists as a result of what people have done to corrupt it. We can just go back to the books and say, well, what is it really? Because it's not what they've done with it, that's for sure. So I'm very grateful that we have books that are greater and older and more profound than any corruption or what corruption has done to it. I just want to finish this idea, as I see that the time is getting closer to the top of the hour. So our intention in discussing the afterlife is not, heaven forbid, to make a person feel morbid or downcast or dispirited. The sages of the Talmud say that when we embark on a path of self-transformation and reintegration a day before death, but the obvious question the Talmud asks is, how do we know when is the day before death? And they say that we should think of that day being today, just in case tomorrow won't be. But the Talmud says that every day we should see as that day before death. Now, since death is certain, but the time when it will happen is uncertain, we should do teshuvah, we should do this level of self-transformation today and every moment. So I want to take it a step further. That's wonderful if it inspires you. But why say a day before death? Why don't you just say, do teshuvah now, experience this experience now, because maybe you're going to die today. Why are you saying maybe you're going to die tomorrow? And one of the ways of solving this is by understanding that the sages had no intention of telling a person to think of death as being imminent or looming, because all that would accomplish is creating more anxiety. All that would accomplish is creating further apprehension. So to paraphrase, they said, sure, you will live today, but think about tomorrow. And if you really think about tomorrow deeply, you may want to reorganize your life today. Thinking of life and its fickle nature could provide us with the proper perspective regarding what is most important in our life right now. So it's not, oh my gosh, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die, which could become very anxiety driven. It's think about the fickle nature of life, become conscious of that, and then hopefully as a result of that, it will help you live a better life today. The mind becomes wonderfully sharp and clear when the prospect of death is seen as a real and inevitable conclusion to life. Remember, what seems foolish in the light of death is essentially foolish at all times, whether or not you include death or not. And so, although the conversation is about tomorrow, regarding today, there's still much more energy to be spent and life to be lived. Every moment is a precious gift. And the present is truly a present. And this teaching and this ability allows us to try to honor it, to honor this moment and to live this way. And that is the value, in my opinion, in exploring the afterlife. The value of exploring the afterlife is only for the reason of allowing ourselves to live our lives better. Is to be able to feel the sensitivity of life, the fragile nature of life, and as a result, to allow us to experience life in a different way, in a more subtle way, in a deeper way than we would have without this knowledge. Without all of your head shaking in agreement, what are you taking out of today?
That kind of just opened up a can of, not worms, but a can of thoughts for me, what you just said.
Okay.
Because that built in, kind of protection that our human brains have with this denial of death serves some purpose, because if somebody really did deliver the news, I'll just use myself as an example, that God forbid I should be dying tomorrow. The literal understanding of what you would do or what I would do with that 24 hours or however long the reality of that might drive a human to do, like, drop everything and go to sit on the beach with their family. But that's not something we can do every day, all day.
Right.
Because then where is this like Saturnian, framework or like discipline in life if we did that? So
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'll be taking away, to think about that some more.
Anyone else?
So as you were saying that last piece, I thought of two things, and it seems as though we have devolved, I don't know if it's emotionally, around the idea of death. And maybe it was as modern medicine had come about and we were able to survive simple illnesses longer. I mean, I don't know what it was, but it does seem like it's such a tangible thing that we are, in general, are afraid and don't want to talk about it. But I was also thinking, as you said, of, I think it's a Native American saying, is today is a good day to die, with the meaning of make every day as if this was your last day, and not that, like Celeste said, maybe not going to the beach, but that you have made your life right. You don't have these horrendous regrets that you can't fix, or that, but from here on out, you are going to live a good life, make it, what is that, teshuva, or I can't think of the phrase, but so that's just what I thought of, and we'll try to take away from that today.
Sandra?
I don't know.
Yeah.
There was a book by Maïmonide, Le Perplexe, no? Something about.
Yeah, the guide to perplexed, yeah.
Yeah. On the one hand, not much printed in my brain today. And on the other hand, it makes perfect sense. I'm stuck in between. and been listening very carefully, and it feels like nothing has been absorbed. And on the other hand, if I reflect on my behavior, my life on a day-to-day, I do try to be the best version of myself at a given time. Not always successful, but I do my best according to my set of values and things that I do observe. And to me, some things are more important than others. So when we talk in terms of elevation, I'm less careful about some rules, but some principles of tzedakah, being kind to others, helping when possible, are a real day-to-day mission for me. So I do feel that, and I try to improve myself, because you never reach perfection. There's no such thing as perfection anyway, so we can always do better. And when I reflect on fear of death, I'm not scared of my death per se, but considering I have two young kids that I still feel I need to guide, even though, if I were to die today or tomorrow, it would be part of their purpose to grow up without a mother. I understand that. But I do still feel that I'm some guide to them. So the most scary part about dying for me is not the act of dying or, what happens to me. That I have it covered. You covered it for me. I'm cool. It's more my lack of presence that scares me. And again, it's not my lack of presence for me. Is the lack of presence of the two kids I brought into this world. I don't know if I make any sense today.
Yeah.
I relate to that very, 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 very much. Thank you for sharing.
Alana, Fami.
Okay, good morning, dear. So I will try to construct something here. I was touched a lot by the guy in I don't know if you saw the videos in Beersheba, right? Like the guy who stabbed people. So we can see that the guy is like he's behaving like an animal. So this is like the animal soul. You see exactly what you taught us. I mean, like this is an animal who behaves like an animal. So also, I think in Judaism we can change the world by ideas, not by force. And again, I think I speak about this last time, is like the Torah have a role here to correct these innovations.
Yeah.
We can kill. There is only 3 ways to die. Shumanigia, if somebody tell you to do another Torah, or to go to kill another person. There is no other exception. And I think we should spread that word, you know. So the Torah have as you said, is the book of reference, and we should go back to and correct, because like the people who behave like that, there are some other persons who brainwash them, or like, so it's a fight of ideas. It's not a fight of, because like we can put army here, we can put like, but still I think it's a fight of ideas, and we have to win that fight. That's what I think, Rabbi. And thank you, and nice to see you.
Yeah, good to see you as well. Thank you. Alana?
Yeah, I knew I'm a little bit stuck, like the belief in resurrection. That part doesn't really speak to me, but I certainly appreciate, you know, kind of the belief in God, as in, you know, being holy and doing your best to, you know, behave in a godly way. You know, more than like, what is God? It's more like, you know, when is God? It's when you do good. And I certainly appreciate, you know, Alessandra sharing the issues about death. It's certainly something, you know, I'm like at the next other stage where I feel that if I died today, it's actually okay, because I've kind of done my job, you know. I've worked, I've had my kids, I've raised them, they're settled, they have their own children, and it's nice to help them and everything, but they don't need me, you know, they will be fine. And that's okay. It's kind of, I feel in a way it's a good place to be. Not that I'm ready to give up, but I'm just saying, since we never know when it will come, I feel in a way that I'm at peace with it.
It's beautiful. I want to, as I'm listening to all of your takeaways, I want to just make a mention that there are religions that have a tremendous focus on death. They're death-focused religions. We are not a death-focused religion. So even though we're having this conversation, it's a unique conversation. It's not a conversation that we usually have. It's not a conversation that you'll find very often. I mean, maybe that's why it's so interesting. It's something that really isn't usually explored, because we are mostly focused on life. Very little.
Can we help them? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but can we help them? Or can we make the world better? Do we have a role to do? That's my question to you, Rabbi.
Well, of course, that's why we're here. There's no question. The fact that you're alive, that you woke up this morning, means that you have work to do. Because if God didn't want you here, you wouldn't be here. But we're not obsessed with death and focused on death. which is why, and I'm so happy to see that your takeaways, and we constantly are going back to this because it's such an important and fundamental part of Judaism and this teaching, is that what can whatever we're learning teach us about how to live better? And I want to just reemphasize that because it's such an important part of the study. And as we start going into the nitty-gritty and to the details in the coming weeks, I think it's important to continue to think about it this way and not to think, whereas it's a fascinating topic and discussion, it's really about what can I take out of it that is going to help me live a better life. With that, I wish you all a wonderful day.
Can I just say one thing on
Sure.
that note? That I want to announce the birth a few days ago of my niece's daughter, the first of her generation. So we have a new
Mazel
soul
tov.
in the world. So Isadora Juniper Bull is here, and it's just thrilling. So she's a cutie. So I thought that was on this topic.
What a nice way.
Santo.
Mazel tov, mazel tov. What a nice way to end our class today. You should have
Thank
a lot of nachas. A lot of joy from her, and she should grow to be able to bring a lot of joy to the family.
Yes, well,
And
she already
follow.
has it. Thank you.
Yeah.
You.
Love the
Everybody-
name. The name is beautiful.
Yes, and if you say the first and last name, is adorable is her name.
I wonder if that was their intention.
Oh, it was.
It
As soon
was.
as soon as she knew she was having a girl, I mean, their last name is Bull. Well, it's also Isadora Duncan. She's an admirer of the dancer, but
Mhm.
it fit with the last name. Yes.
Good.
That's
so good.
great.
So, all right, everybody, have a great day.
You too.
Amazing. Rabbi, how do you translate Osher?
Oh, sure. Wealthy or
Osher, isn't it silk? Like
sure. Yes. Still, yes.
because when you tell, for a baby, Osher
Yeah.
benachas,
Yeah, that's right.
right? So maybe silk and joy.
Yeah.
Amazing. Mazal tov. Have a lovely day, everyone.
Thanks.